Welcome to episode 185 of the Grip Strip Podcast, the History Makers edition of the Grip Strip Podcast. My name is Phil Matthew. I'm your host, and I'm here with my co-host, the iRacing Indy 500 champion, computer genius, a gentleman and a scholar, and back from Labor Day holiday race back home for this. His name is Josh Afan. What's going on, brother?
I'm doing great, Phil, and of course, happy Labor Day to everybody. Hopefully everybody had a good holiday weekend, kind of the end of the summer and all that stuff. A lot of history made this past weekend, of course, in racing and all of that, which we'll get into. And of course, for all Jacksonville Jaguars fans out there, happy 904 Day, the area code in Jacksonville. So, good for that as well. So, ready to get into it.
Yeah, we're going to get into the Jaguars, also get into the 49ers, and give a mini NFL season preview here for 2023, since depending on when you listen to this show, you might listen to it before or after the season actually opens, since Kermit the Frog and the Kansas City Chiefs will be putting up their second Super Bowl banner this Thursday night against the Detroit Lions in the season opener. We'll go over the Cup Series race, which saw Young Money get his first win at Darlington after many years of second places and close calls. Denny Hamlin dominated the race, but what he thought was a loose wheel ended up relegating him to the back. But now he's got a multi-year extension, and 2311 stays with Toyota. So there's that little bit of news that really isn't all that shocking. We'll get into all the stuff that happened in the Southern 500, talk about Denny Hamlin's XFinity win, his sixth XFinity win at Darlington on Saturday in a green-white checkered, and the points situation with one race to go in the XFinity Series. Portland in the IndyCars was a culmination or coronation for Alex Palou in getting his second championship and utilizing the correct strategy, it looked in the end, to take over early in the race and just basically destroy the field in the process. Take his fifth win of 2023 and his second career IndyCar championship. We'll go into all the details of the race at Portland and some silly season news that's been, or updates that have come out between last week and this week. Italian Grand Prix for 15 laps was actually interesting because Carlos Sainz from pole actually held off fish lips, but eventually the jig was up. He passed Carlos Sainz, the driver for Ferrari, and that was the end of that. But the battle behind fish lips was somewhat interesting. Ferrari did everything in their power, at least Charles Leclerc did everything in his power to try to crash both of them out of the race. But in the end, Checo Perez struggled for a lot of the day, but eventually got to second, and Carlos Sainz held on to third. Talk about the incidents that both Mercedes drivers had and some of the other stuff that went on. Logan Sargent has his best finish of his Formula One career, this very close to getting his first points. We'll do that preview for the NFL, talk about our fantasy teams. Just drafted one of my teams earlier this morning, so we'll get in all of that. The GSP roundup, we'll talk about MotoGP, Moto2. There's a carnage-filled Barcelona weekend. Major injuries, massive crashes took place there, and because they're in a run where they're going to run like 10 out of 11 out of 13 weeks, that's people getting hurt. It's going to become really tough to have those bikes those seats filled for those bikes. Indy Next was at Portland last week, and they'll finish out their 2023 season at Laguna Seca. The U.S. Nationals took place today, so we'll give you the winners from the pro classes. We'll preview F2 and F3 at Monza, or review F2 and F3 at Monza. F3 season's over. F2 has one more race to go, and that'll be at Abu Dhabi. World Superbikes come back from their summer break to go and race at Manicourt, and World Endurance Championship comes back for the first time in a while to race at Fuji. We'll preview and make our picks for the Laguna Seca IndyCar season finale, and also for Cup and Xfinity at Kansas, and who we think is going to make the playoff in the Xfinity Series. I mean, essentially 11 of the 12 spots are locked, so there's not really a whole lot to get into that, but we'll still get into it. Josh will tell us all things going on in the world of sim racing in his sim segment, and we'll close the deal. So we'll start with the Southern 500, the Cookout Southern 500. The third win of 2023 for Kyle Larson, 22nd career win for him, and his first at Darlington after many years, many second place finishes at this racetrack. Has fallen short a few years ago. I remember like 2018, I think, was when, or 2017, when he had the race won and they had issues on pit road, and Brad Keselowski used alternative strategy or whatever or better pit stop to go and get ahead and win the race. There's been other times, of course, earlier this year when him and Chastain were going after each other and wrecked each other out of the race. So this has been one of his best racetracks, but now he has the hardware to show it. He led 55 laps. He led the last 55 laps of the race, and went on to win. As I said, from 18th. He had a great car during practice, albeit short practice, but didn't have the qualifying. It didn't really matter in the end, though. He made his way up the field, and it was no big deal for the driver of the number 5. Locks himself into the round of 12. Kyle Larson, Tyler Reddick, Christopher Buescher, William Byron, Ross Chastain, your top 5. Byron from 23rd and Chastain from 27. Chastain was a lap down at one point during the race, too. Brad Keselowski, Darrell Walsh Jr., William Clyde Elliott II, who's running for the Owners' Championship, not the drivers, and Ryan Blaney. Means the first 9 drivers are all playoff eligible. Eric Jones, the first non-playoff driver, the defending winner of the Southern 500, finished 10th. One of his best runs of the year. Kyle Busch, Joey Logano, 11th and 12th. So 11 out of the first 12 were playoff eligible drivers. We look at the results. Reddick ended up leading 4 times for 90 laps. The vast majority of the race was led by the 3 Toyotas of Denny Hamlin, who led 177 laps and won both stages, 90 for his driver, Tyler Reddick, and then 40 laps for Christopher Bell, who started from pole. But in the end, you had other guys that started to come up later in the race and make their presence known, but in the end, Larson gets the victory, locks himself into the round of 12, and he was 3rd in stage 1, 2nd in stage 2, so he was there the whole night. And it's a long time coming for him in that sense. They only had one. What was it? They had the stage. Stage 2, I guess the first caution, the 180 caution was the stage 1 caution, I guess. Or no, I don't even know where I forget what lap it was for the stage 1 caution, because they had a wreck between Joey Logano and, Bubba Wallace, and the Joey Logano spin was what ended the first stage. Then they had lights out inside of 3 and 4, which stopped the race for a little while. And then they had some more cautions there, a couple other yellows. There was like 2 big wrecks later in the race, which we'll get into in a little bit. But Kyle Larson gets the win, Josh. He wasn't the favorite, the immediate favorite, but he's definitely somebody everyone was looking at. And he finally gets the big trophy at Darlington, gets another major on his mantle there. A guy who always is chasing trophies and chasing wins. He gets another big one to add to his Knoxville Nationals victory and winning at North Wilkesboro and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle Larson over the years, he's been somebody who's been pretty fast his whole career at Darlington, but has just never closed the deal. A couple years ago, remember in 2021, made that move on the last lap to try to get around Denny Hamlin on the wall, but didn't close the deal there. And finished second to Truex Jr., I think, in the spring race a few years ago as well. So he's had definitely a lot of fast cars here over the years at Darlington, and this definitely, I think, this track definitely fits his driving style. So it's just a matter of time before he would eventually win a race here. And I think it's definitely one of his biggest wins of his career so far. This is one of the crown jewel races of NASCAR, and definitely one that any driver, if they win here in the Southern 500, definitely shows that they have the ability and talent to be able to win up at the Cup level for sure. And for Kyle Larson, we already know what he can do, and of course this year kind of been hot and cold. I think they've had good pace throughout the entire year, but they just haven't had the finishes or the luck at points throughout the season to show for it. They've had 2 wins before this, and now they had their third win, but they've been kind of on a cold streak as of late. Average finish of like 17.5 before this race coming in, and now leaving this race, they're locked their way into the round of 12. So definitely got to think about Kyle Larson potentially making his way to the Final Four. I mean, I think there's always I think most people probably have him on that list, or getting into the round of 8. But I think with how he's has 2 weeks to prepare for getting into the round of going into the round of 12 and making it past that. So he has that preparation now and can kind of free roll in the next 2 weeks as we still are in the round of 16. So for Larson, definitely a good win there to get here. And I mean he had issues early on, kind of got into the wall a little bit, but he was able to get around that. And then of course fighting Tyler Reddick after the last 55 laps, last restart, he was in control of the race and definitely was able to keep Tyler Reddick at bay. And I think Reddick probably had some opportunities to get around him, but it's just really hard to pass, especially with this car, and especially being Darlington, being a narrow groove. But good win for him, and definitely gets some momentum back in his direction going into this next round of the playoffs for sure.
Yeah, and getting himself back into the mix. As you mentioned, not been consistent this year relative to a couple of years ago when he won the championship. More like what he was doing last year, but getting that victory, getting himself back into the mix. You have Will Byron, who had a bad qualifying run, but was able to make it work and move forward and, kind of maximize his day, especially when you had Denny Hamlin probably had the race. It was locked up, but he didn't close it. Martin Truex had a rough day. I mean, those are opportunity races. That's an opportunity there, and he made it work. And credit to the Hendrick guys. It wasn't really a Chevy day by any means, but the way the results look, there's 3 Chevys in the top 5 and 5 in the top 10. So, and that's what matters. I guess it's when it doesn't matter what it was at the start of the day, as long as where you are at the end of the day. And the Chevys ended up looking pretty good with that. I mean, a lot of the playoff guys were there. I mean, Elliott was somewhat of a factor, but not really. Blaney had one of the better cars, but had issues later in the race. Brad Keselowski was up there, through all the pit sequences, but wasn't able to time everything right. But Chris Buescher was able to time things right, get himself into a position to win possibly his fourth race in like the last 6 or something. He is a factor in this playoff for sure. I mean, if people were doubting that, I think you have to put that to bed. Getting another top 5 finish, top 10 qualifying. Didn't lead, but only got 2 stage points, but third place finish, you can't sleep on that. You go back into the field there. I mean, Dal Walsh Jr. from 19th goes up to 7th. He had moments. He spun out, as I mentioned, with Joey Logano. The end of stage 1, had to drive his way back up, and was able to do that. So he doesn't have a lot of points. So he doesn't have playoff points. So he needs to maximize his finishes. And going to be a lot of pressure coming up this coming weekend. You look at some of the drivers that are not in the playoff. I mentioned Chase Elliott, who's not in the Drivers' Championship. Eric Jones. AJ Allmendinger had a really good run, 13th place finish. Was up in the top 15, 20 most of the day. Eric Almirola and Chase Briscoe qualified pretty good, and Briscoe ended up, he didn't get any stage points, but Almirola did get one. Briscoe went way back at some point, then came back. He was a yo-yo the whole entire day. Richard was able to recover. He had some problems, but 16th place finish for him. But want to give a shout out to Carson Hocevar, and only his second career Cup start. Qualified in the top 15, finished 17th in the Southern 500. Driving for Legacy. That's one of the best runs that Legacy Motor Club car has had.
It's like the worst car in the field.
Yeah, that's basically the best run that the Legacy 42 has had ever since they put it together. I figure, or one of. So Hocevar, and they were talking him up during the 3 Sons of the Legends or whatever segment that's the second stage at Darlington every year. They were talking up Hocevar, and I think his prospects will look pretty high. I don't know if it means he's going to go to Colleague, or if he's going to go, if he's going to just go up to Cup, or if he's going to go to Xfinity or what, but I think he's in a good place. Martin Truex had a rough weekend. It's one of his better racetracks, but qualifying didn't go his way, and he really wasn't able to make anything else out of it. Kevin Harvick and Denny Hamlin, though, I'll talk about these 4 guys. Kevin Harvick, Truex is not so much, but it's like Kevin Harvick, Bell, Hamlin, McDowell. Harvick was running up front most of the day. Seemed like he was in the top 5 for a good amount of it. Was in position, had taken the lead. Caution comes out. He's on pit road, decides to pit, gets sent back to the tail end of the longest line, and basically that ended his day. Miscommunication, whether it was because they missed the light, or between Tim Feedwa and Harvick and Childers, that the triumvirate, they decided, they made it in or not, I don't know. But that basically ended their day, and that was going to be a top 5, top 10 finish, possible win in what is Kevin Harvick's final year of his career in Cup. Lose a lot of points in the process, too. Christopher Bell ended up 23rd after starting on pole. But I think the bigger story, there were a lot of errors and issues, but they took place on pit road. They changed the pit crews they swapped him and Keebler Gibbs pit crew. This is supposed to be the fastest pit crew in the sport. Yet, in their debut for Christopher Bell, there were issues on at least 3 pit stops. Then Christopher Bell was overdriving the car and hit the fence, got an argy-bargy. and you take a car that was likely to be a top 5, top 10 candidate, finish 23rd with it. Just lose a lot of points there. And Michael McDowell was up front. He started in the top 10. He had a decent car, but then I think track position and the pit sequences went against him, and then he got into a wreck and was not able to maximize his days. So after all the momentum of a few weeks ago at Indianapolis winning that race, Watkins Glen, where he had arguably one of, if not the best car, and because of electrical issues or whatever it was, couldn't close that deal. Now he comes to Darlington and is left holding the bag, and now he's behind, going to Kansas and going to Bristol here with 2 races to go. But I wanted to talk about Denny Hamlin, Josh. I mean, he dominated the race. It's definitely a track that you'd think of for Denny Hamlin. And him and Larson were racing 1-2 for a portion of the race and thought it was going to end up where Larson was going to move him over for the win. But Denny Hamlin took himself out of it by one of the pit stops. They didn't get the left rear, I guess, set properly. And he said he had a loose wheel. By what they looked at, it wasn't. But Denny Hamlin felt it was. And after that, his race and night went downhill. He was part of the collateral damage that I can connect to this other piece, which is the Alex Bowman Daniel Suarez beef, since it doesn't seem like they're very big fans of each other. It kind of seems to be a pattern with Alex Bowman. If you're colored, he has a problem with them. But the two of them are running into each other, running over each other, blocking. And Alex Bowman tried to block. He did the block me once, whatever, and then blocked me twice. And he went and got turned into the grandstands. And I mean, he shouldn't have been shocked by that. So Denny Hamlin was residual damage in that too. I mean, for Denny Hamlin, is it something? I mean, now coming off of announcing his multi-year extension, you don't like losing races, of course, but you want to go and when you have chances to win big ones, you don't want to give them away. And will it make a difference? Will it focus them? Will it make them better? Or will it be something like how it has been in other years with Denny Hamlin, and it might set him off on a different path? And then secondarily, what did you think about that whole incident, and then the post-incident sound and social media fodder that took place between Suarez, Travis Mack, and Alex Bowman after that unnecessary incident that took place?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, with Denny Hamlin, I mean, yeah, he had the best car all night in the Southern 500, which is not surprising for Denny Hamlin. You know, Darlington is very much a Denny Hamlin type track. You know, he's won this race before and knows how to get around here. So, yeah, it's very surprising to see him take himself out like that with a loose wheel. But, you know, maybe he didn't want to take the risk and was willing to, didn't want to take the risk of continuing on that loose wheel and then take the risk of going down pit road and potentially losing a lap, which he did, and doing that, and then lost his lap, and then eventually gets caught up in that wreck on lap 330, which also took out Michael McDowell there. So, yeah, it's a little uncharacteristic, I feel like, of Denny Hamlin, but, you know, now that he's got that contract put away, it's no longer a distraction. So, and, you know, the 2311 deal is done as well. So, now that that's all put away and, you know, no one's going to talk about that anymore, now I can focus the next 9 weeks on the chase and the playoffs and continuing on. So, I don't think he's in risk of not making the round of 12. But certainly, you know, now that that's all out of the way, now I can focus on winning one of the next 2 races. He's good at Kansas. You know, they've had speed all of the Gibbs Toyotas 2311 both been fast the last couple of races at Kansas, so wouldn't be surprised to see Denny Hamlin win at Kansas. Not sure about Bristol. We don't really have as much data points on Bristol because they turned it into dirt and everything for the first race, and the concrete Bristol last year, of course, was a wild one, so there's not really a lot of information to go back on that. But I'm sure he'll do fine at Bristol, and then round of 12, he's got Talladega in it as well, so we know he's good at plate tracks. So I don't think for Denny Hamlin's championship chances, at least right now, not too worried about it. Although certainly it does help to win the Southern 500 and kick off your playoff run for this year in 2023 off with a bang. So that's a missed opportunity there. As far as the other drivers, throughout the playoffs, I think for people on the bubble like Bubba Wallace, it definitely hurts to not get stage points, but and he isn't on solid ground. But I think if you're going to be on the outside looking in, it's better to be only 1 point out than be in Michael McDowell's position or anything like that, where you have several points that you need to make up, and you come out of that first race in essentially a must-win situation. That's where you don't want to be in. So I think for Bubba Wallace only being 1 point out, that's a good position, and he's going into a track that he's won at before and has generally run well at the last couple of races at. So I think he's in a good position to move into the round of 12 after Kansas. So I'm not really too concerned about him, as long as they execute and they don't run into any trouble there. For Harvick, he's also a guy, I think he missed out on an opportunity here. And then also you have to look at the other end of what caused that incident to happen, where he decided to pull on pit road. You had Tyler Reddick, who basically pulled off a Quinn Houff from a couple of years ago and basically cut down into Ryan Newman and caused Newman to spin out. So for Newman, that's not ideal, and for Reddick, he was a way late maneuver to try to go to pit road, and everything, just jamming on the brakes, and basically after you've essentially passed where you need to pull off and everything. So that's maybe unethical of Tyler Reddick to do that. So it's got to be a better way of executing that, I guess. So Harvick, if he doesn't make this round of 12, he's going to look back on that situation. I think it was out of their control at that point to go ahead and pit or not pit there. I think they were banking on themselves having cleared the pit road cone or pit road line before the caution came out, and they gambled wrong. But they were trying to win the race, because obviously if you keep going and don't pit and then pit later on during the caution, you go back to 15th and everything, whereas everybody's taking their opportunity to pit as well. And then if you and potentially maybe only recover to 7th or 8th or something like that, and then on the other hand, if you are able to pit once the yellow comes out like they're intending on, then you potentially can come out in the lead or close to it and potentially have a shot for the win. So that was unfortunate for him there. So he doesn't have that opportunity now. So still on the outside looking in, and finished 19th, where probably could have ran top 5 at the very least for him. So it's unfortunate for start to his final playoff in his Cup career and everything there. So, and then of course the incident with Suarez and Bowman. So looks like there's been some bad blood before that. I guess apparently Bowman has not liked how Daniel Suarez has raced him in the past for whatever reason. And then he said the first block was intentional, but the second block, I guess he didn't realize that Daniel Suarez is already to his right there. So I guess, obviously both of them are bad, but this the second one that led to the yellow coming out. Definitely didn't need to have that happen and everything. And they're fighting for 8th and 9th place. So guess it gets to a late point in the race, but I guess Alex Bowman really felt like that he needed to protect his position and stay up there. He said that if they could survive the first couple of laps after a restart, that they would be able to keep going on the long run. Felt like they had a good car on the long run, but they made a mistake with driver tactics, and now ends up behind the wall for the rest of the race. So it was interesting. Of course, then goes on social media, he talked about on that and said the Travis Mack had flipped him off at the airport or something, which that's kind of interesting because a couple of years ago, Alex Bowman was in the 88 car. Travis Mack was the car chief when Dale Jr. was in there, and that's when they were subbing for Dale Jr. and that's back in 2016, I think. So obviously they've had a relationship in the past, so that's kind of interesting that somebody you've worked with in the past would flip you off like that. And then Travis Mack denied it and then said, well, maybe it's a result of a concussion or something like that you're making that accusation. So kind of interesting there to see that debacle and to see the, I guess, argy bargy play out on Twitter. So definitely for Bowman, not, especially being a guy that's not in the playoffs, you don't want to have these incidents and fall out of the out of the top 20 or anything like that in points or anything like that. And plus your ally is one of the major sponsors in the sport now, supporting them, the 48 team, and also being a partner with NASCAR and other entities right now. So definitely a bad look for that. So they definitely don't want to have anything negative that ruins the playoff race, or anything like that. So definitely not good for him there. So we'll see how that plays out if they have any more run-ins. I'm sure with Bristol coming up, maybe there's another opportunity there for Suarez to get back at him, or potentially later on at the Roval or at Miami, or not Miami, but at Martinsville. So we'll see how that goes. But I think this race definitely I think last year's version of the Southern 500 was way more chaotic. I think a lot of stuff happened to playoff drivers last year. This one, not as much, but of course, he still had a lot of incidents that took place, like, the one with Hamlin and McDowell, and the one with Bowman, Suarez, and even the incident with Reddick trying to get on pit road and spinning out Ryan Newman there, and then of course the lights going out. So this one's definitely wild. Darlington, it's always kind of, it's an endurance race. It's definitely one of the tougher 500-mile races that we see here, and I think all of racing. So definitely for that is definitely one of the more wilder ones, although we've certainly seen wilder, but certainly a start to the 2023 playoffs in the round of 12.
Yeah, definitely a lot of stuff that went on, and you're right about, and I've said it too, like, it is an endurance race. You have to make the car last in a time where these cars and everything seems to never fail. You had McLeod blow an engine. You've had like different failures and stuff because you hit the fence enough, you're gonna break toe links and stuff. So all different things like that. And then of course you have people with their tempers too. Reddick, prior to going and ARCA braking, trying to get into the pits there and taking Newman out, knew he was pissed off because Ryan Newman was being Ryan Newman, because he's lapped down and didn't want to move, which is interesting. It'll kind of flow into what we talk about with IndyCar. But so that was interesting how all that worked. The whole Bowman Suarez thing, when you're blocking people like that, it's you're asking for that. And then the other stuff, Bowman has to make himself relevant somehow, because he hasn't really been relevant all year as a driver, other than flipping over a sprint car. So now he goes and blocks Daniel Suarez and gets into it. That's literally what it is. He hasn't really had a great year this year. He hasn't really been all that good for the last couple of years, really. But because he drives the Ally 48 car, he's protected. But, it's kind of, Alex Bowman is covered, like he's in a bubble or something. But then when you go and actually race him, he shows that he's a bitch, just like everybody else at Hendrick Motorsports. See what happens with everything at Kansas here coming up next week. Points. Byron leads the overall point standings by 1 over Larson, of course, who's locked in to the next round. Reddick third. Buescher and Hamlin tied for 4th, so they're 18 points behind Byron. Martin Truex is minus 20 in 6th. Kyle Busch, Brad Keselowski, Ryan Blaney, Ross Chastain, Joey Logano, and Christopher Bell round out the 12 that are in right now. Josh mentioned Bubba Wallace is minus 1, Kevin Harvick minus 2, O. Richard minus 4, and Michael McDowell is minus 19 with 2 races to go in the round of 16. We'll move to the Xfinity Series race, and while the Southern 500 didn't go so well for Denny Hamlin, the Sport Clips Haircuts VFW Help a Hero 200 did. His 6th win in the Xfinity Series at Darlington, won in overtime. It was a race that was basically John Hunter Nemechek, Austin Hill, and Denny Hamlin. Nobody else really featured. There wasn't a whole lot of movement either. Only 5 different drivers led the race. Denny Hamlin in his one Xfinity race of the year wins. Austin Hill second. Nemechek from pole won both stages and led the most laps. Third, Cole Custer fourth. Josh Berry 5th. Wasn't straightforward 5th, but he got 5th. Riley Herbst in 6th. Justin Allgaier, Sheldon Creed, Kyle Busch in the 10 for Colleague, and Daniel Hemrick for Colleague as well in 10th. Sam Mayer, Chandler Smith, Parker Retzlaff actually led a lap in the race, or led 5 laps, so credit to him. Buckshot Jones, Corey Heim, top 15. Rajah Caruth got a top 20 finish. Sammy Smith hit the wall early in the race, was able to recover. Chastain, 23rd. You got Stephen Parsons, who's driving for SS Greenlight, got a top 20 out of it. This race, Kyle Larson had mechanical issues with his 17 car. He was up there, but he wasn't as fast as he was in the spring. Hamlin wasn't the favorite by any means. I think John Hunter was the best car, and Hill was right there with him to a point. But once you get green-white checkers into play and you have a Cup Series veteran making those restarts, being able to be advantageous there, and Denny Hamlin took advantage of the 2 guys running for the regular season title to get that victory. Another win for the 19 here in this season. But in the case of John Hunter Nemechek, he gets more playoff points, gets himself closer in that mix. It's going to be hard for him, though, to win the regular season title outside of Austin Hill having a rare DNF this coming weekend. He could win, but he could win the race. It's highly likely that he could win the race. He can win, but Austin Hill does what he's done most of the year. Won't matter. Same for Allgaier. You're going to need a lot of help. But yeah, Denny Hamlin, he's won 10 times at Darlington. Probably should have been 11, but wins the sponsors race. Did a good job there late in the race. But the 2 guys that have dominated this Xfinity Series, Josh, continue to show why they're head and shoulders above everybody else.
And for most of this race, obviously Denny Hamlin led the last little bit of it, only leading 14 laps in this race. Really in leading last little bit there, which we'll get into why they were able to pull off that win. But for John Hunter Nemechek, obviously he led a good chunk of this race, and it's not surprising. In the spring he was all the way up there fighting for the win with Larson back then. So of course they went and brought back the same car probably, or the same theory behind why that car was so good. So for Austin Hill, John Hunter Nemechek, they're right there in the thick of it between the 2 of them racing. And still John Hunter's got 23 points to Austin Hill that he's behind. So still a little bit of work to do, but shows just how good they are when both of them, lead laps and are able to finish second and third in this race here. So it was definitely a interesting race. I think one thing we got to talk about here is the deal with Parker Kligerman and Sam Mayer that caused that last caution there. And Sam Mayer looks like he just went way deep into the corner and took out Parker Kligerman. And of course, Parker Kligerman was 20 points to the good on the playoff points or playoff standings for him to be in, and now he's fallen out or is on the bubble now. So for him to lose that many points, that's not good. And of course, I think he does definitely have to be has the right to be mad at Sam Mayer. I mean, it looked pretty bad, to be honest, with how Darlington is. I mean, maybe Parker was on older tires than Sam Mayer and had to brake earlier into the corner, and maybe Sam had better tires or something like that. But still, going in that deep into the corner and then just flat out taking out a guy. I mean, regardless if he meant to or not, I mean, it's just not good. So I think that's the outside of those big guys that made it in, of course, and everything like John Hunter and Austin Hill. I think for Parker Kligerman, somebody that I don't know if he's can really consider him a championship contender or anything like that, but certainly first season back full time in Xfinity, and you have an opportunity to make the playoffs and your first year back. I mean, obviously you want to be able to make it in, and for Sam Mayer to set you back, and that is definitely at your expense and definitely something to be upset about. So race, definitely for Denny Hamlin. It's a win. It's a win that he can always have. I mean, it's consolation for not winning the Southern 500, I guess. But for the rest of the guys, I mean, what more can you give in this race? I guess it's definitely one of the tougher races to win, I think, in Xfinity, just like the Southern 500 is in Cup. But Denny Hamlin seems like every time he enters this race, he's always like one of the locks and one of the favorites to win.
It's usually the case. That's why Reverend Gibbs puts him in there to go and win. I mean, it was Darlington, the fall Darlington race back in 2004, where Denny Hamlin made his Xfinity debut. And he finished in the top 10 that day. And now, how many years later? Nearly 20 years later, and he's still driving for Joe Gibbs Racing, and he's going to drive for even longer than that. But Austin Hill and John Hunter, they had the race under control. Sam Mayer, driving over his head, admitted to it, but in the end, it's not consolation to Parker. He had a lot more points on the cutoff. It's only 20 right now, so he's definitely not safe. But 20 points is hard to, make up for a guy in Riley Herbst who, outside of the early part of this year, has not really shown that he can make up chunks of points, especially in one shot. Even though Stewart-Haas Racing in the past has been good at Kansas, I'm not so sure if they are at that same level right now. We get into the point standings out of curiosity there. 27 points. Austin Hill's up on Justin Allgaier, 28 points on John Hunter. So the regular season title is still in play. But, as long as Austin Hill gets a relative performance for what he's done most of the year, he's going to end up winning the regular season title, getting that 15 playoff point bonus, taking a points lead over John Hunter and Nemechek into Bristol. Allgaier, I'm sure, is going to do everything he can to try to make something happen, and John Hunter has been good at these intermediate tracks all year. Custer, fourth, locked in on that. Sam Mayer has got a 22-point lead on Josh Berry. So those spots I think are all basically set. Sheldon Creed is only 4 points ahead of Daniel Hemrick and 8 points ahead of Chandler Smith. So those positions could change before the end of the day or on Saturday. Now, Parker Kligerman is 10th overall in points, 20 points ahead of Riley Herbst. You have two guys, of course, that have one that are behind them. That's Sammy Smith and Jeb Burton. So those are the guys that are locked in. That's the 11 right now. So basically, when you look at Josh Berry, Daniel Hemrick, and who's the other one? Yeah, Josh Berry and Daniel Hemrick. I think those two guys are solidly in. Basically, I mean, definitely Josh Berry's in, but I think as long as Daniel Hemrick starts his car and runs a few laps, he'll be all right, and he'll make it in. When it comes to, I was trying to look, Sheldon Creed is in that same boat as well. Both those guys just have to start the race on Saturday, and both of those guys are basically going to be locked in. Josh Berry is locked in because there's no mathematical equation that can happen where Josh Berry is going to not make it because he's plus 110 over the cut line. So he's already in. They just haven't put it there. So there's only one spot left. Kligerman 20 up on Riley Herbst. Everybody else has to win. The likes of Bruckshot Jones, Parker Retzlaff, Moffitt, etc., etc. You're going to need to pull a Hail Mary to get into the playoff if you want to participate in at Bristol starting the following week. All right, let's move forward to the IndyCar race at Portland. It was a race of varying strategies. You had guys that started the race on alternate tires, like the pole sitter Graham Rahal and outside pole sitter Scott McLaughlin. Those guys were amongst a group that ended up being overtaken by the people that started on primaries, which included the now two-time NTT IndyCar Series champion Alex Palou, and Felix Rosenqvist ended up running a different strategy from other people, even left his red tire run till the end. Both Palou and Dixon, though, really maximized their tires there in the first stint. Paddle Award. And that's why those guys ended up being where they were. Joseph Newgarden crashed in qualifying, but then came back. But it wasn't as straightforward as it might have been if he had actually had a clean day. Alex Palou, though, after everything, gets the victory, wins by 5.4 seconds over Felix Rosenqvist, and Scott Dixon finishes third, just over 8 seconds behind. Palou's fifth win of 2023 and locks up his second championship. Paddle Award fourth, Joseph Newgarden fifth, Rinus VeeKay best run this year outside of the Indy 500. Marcus Ericsson, David Malukas from 23rd, finished 8th. Scott McLaughlin from 2nd, falls back to 9th. Kyle Kirkwood rounds out the top 10. Christian Lundgaard had a nightmare Saturday in qualifying. He had good pace on Friday, didn't translate to qualifying, got held up in traffic, and only started 17th, but he ends up beating his teammate Graham Rahal in the race. Started 17th, finished 11th, while Graham Rahal started first and finished 12th. Colton Herta started third and finished 13th. So he tells you what the alternate guys ended up really getting screwed in that initial strategy. There was one caution early, which involved Will Power spinning out, overdriving and then they didn't have another caution until lap 85, which was a controversial caution, which we'll get into in a minute. But 17 cars on the lead lap. The only car that was knocked out, or was theoretically knocked out earlier in the race, was Romain Grosjean, who launched over the back of, I think he launched over the back of Callum Ilott, and just knocked off the left front corner of his car. He was fighting with his team the day before during qualifying. Now they know, everybody knows that he's going to be leaving Andretti Autosport. It sounds like he's going to go back to Dale Coyne next year, along with doing his Lamborghini IMSA GTP responsibilities. But yeah, I mean, Alex Palou, what can you say? He took the lead on lap 22. Swapped it around with Dixon. There's Malukas there for a second. Basically, Palou and Dixon were doing hot potato with the lead, but in the end, Palou led 69 of the races, 110 laps. It wasn't really a race after he took that lead over, Josh. Kind of a signature of what his whole entire year was, and why he is now Chip Ganassi likes winners, and he now has a 2-time IndyCar Series champion driving that number 10 car.
Of course, and I think Alex Palou, didn't have the speed at early on in that race, of course, with Graham Rahal starting out on pole and had the red tires there, so and Palou on the alternates, but I think for the strategy wise, you start on the reds. I think the whole idea is you try to build up big enough gap, to where once you need to go back onto the primaries on the blacks, that eventually it'll kind of even out, and you'll kind of net stay in the lead, or at least net a podium or top 5 result there, and that didn't really happen. And so once they pitted, Graham Rahal and everybody else on the reds pitted, for Palou, with the way his pace, how he's been able to just kind of set the pace in the field and not really have any issues or anything like that. From then on is just Palou is able to hold on to the lead. I mean, yeah, he had a little bit of hot potato, like you said, for the lead with him and Scott Dixon, but Palou just has had better pace throughout the weekend, and throughout the entire year over Scott Dixon. So for Palou, says hello to another title there, second in 3 years, and we talked about him before with the contract dispute, and I think Chip Ganassi has his guy that can be the flagship vehicle or driver after Scott Dixon eventually retires, whenever that is. So I expect Palou to be there for at least a few more years, and I think you're starting to kind of see the transition from Dixon being the main guy over there to Palou being the main guy, and I think it'll be sooner or later Palou will be the face of I think he already is the face of Chip Ganassi Racing, but I think Scott Dixon, I'm sure he's probably got one more title left in him, but I think Scott Dixon's definitely going to have some challenges here the next season or two, however many long he decides to keep going, with Palou now having 2 out of 3 in the last 3 years that they've been together. But for this race, is the stuff with the Graham Rahal, I think with how they started out on their black or red strategy, I think it was an interesting strategy to take. But I think you have to give them credit for being able to have, pace to be on pole in this race, and that they are showing that at least they still have a pulse, and in IndyCar. Even though they finished 12th, go back to last month when they ran on pole and ran well at Indianapolis and got a podium there. So at least they still have a pulse, and they're still able to have some decent speed, even though they didn't finish where they probably wanted to in this one. So, and at least they led laps. But yeah, good result there for Palou, obviously winning the 2023 title. And then I think Felix Rosenqvist also, I think he had a really good run, of course. Kind of unexpected though for him. He's usually not the top guy at McLaren, but he's had a good run here at this race. And then of course, Palou Award also had a good finish. And then talked about Rinus VeeKay in the picks in our last episode, and of course Rinus ends up getting a 6th place finish. So actually a good result there as a wild card pick if you were looking at him as somebody to look at here. But yeah, I mean, not I think there's not too much happened in this race otherwise. It was dominated much by Palou. I mean, the incident at the beginning with Will Power causing the first incident, and Augustin Canapino with the last caution on lap 85. Yeah, not too much happened here, but it's been the story this season though, with Alex Palou dominating thoroughly throughout the year since the month of May, really.
Yeah, and he had the Indy 500 in his grasp too, so this could have been over even before Portland if he had actually come through and won the Indianapolis 500. But now his biggest battle is going to be in the High Court in London, between himself, Chip Ganassi, with Chip Ganassi's support, and going against Zach Brown and McLaren. But Alex Palou's driving talent is undeniable. He is one of the best drivers that have come to IndyCar in a long time. And it's something that he is going to be, it's a gain for IndyCar. Formula One's definitely missing out on that because he is really, really good, and he's really, really fast. And there are guys like Scott Dixon and Joseph Newgarden, amongst others, that are probably like, well, he's really good and he's a good guy for the series and all, but man, he's probably taken away from some opportunities from us because he's that damn good. But yeah, Alex Palou is just unbelievable. He's done that multiple times this year, and the strategy, the way they've done it, and you just have to give it to him. Ganassi, 15 championship for Chip Ganassi Racing. So that's amazing feat. Only 2 titles behind his buddy, the great Captain Roger Penske. And you talked about like the foundation for the future at Chip Ganassi Racing, Josh, and signed Palou, the multi-year deal, big contract, big money. They also have signed Linus Lundqvist to a multi-year deal to take over the 8 car, what has been the 8 car, which has been driven by Marcus Ericsson, since he's going to be moving over to drive the 28 DHL car at Andretti. Linus Lundqvist, defending Indy Next champion, didn't have a ride all year, jumped into the 60 car and as a substitute for Simon Pagenaud, does really well at Nashville, then goes and runs an oval and does all right there at Gateway. And the next thing you know, now he's going to be a Ganassi driver. So the future, how do you replace a GOAT? You get 2 guys to replace a GOAT. That's essentially what Ganassi is saying, because now he's going to have Alex Palou, who's not like old, but he's a little older, and he has a little more, definitely more experience. And you have the young gun in Linus Lundqvist, who are going to be the foundation builders for the future. And you had, it brought up Malukas. It sounds like he's going to go to McLaren to drive the 6 car, because he's not going to have his dad's funding to move over which I thought was the case. So it had been, but I guess they brought it up during the race that he's not going to have his dad's funding there to move over. So he'll be driving for McLaren next year, it seems like. And it's a good move for him, getting American into a top team. So you have that. Ganassi, of course, is biased against that, but you have Joseph Newgarden at Penske. You have Malukas, and then you have Pato Ward at McLaren. So you have the American flavor, both North American and South American. And then you have I'm trying to think of where the other American drivers. You have Andretti with Kirkwood and Herta. But I mean, there's one piece there, like bringing up O'Ward and Marcus Armstrong, which I was talking about in terms of who's going to be there at Ganassi. Issues with lap cars came up again yesterday. Also, I mean, that was one piece that affected the race. Guys not moving over after they've been lapped, and there isn't a set of rules. Like they had inconsistent blocking calls yesterday, which has been an issue all year. I mean, it's been a story over the years with Stewart, the way that the stewards have done things at IndyCar, and it's something where the steward shouldn't be named. You shouldn't know the name of the steward. It really shouldn't matter. It's kind of like what happened in Formula One, which is why 80-21 happened, and Michael Massey became bigger than the race. He insisted on inserting himself into it, and he fucked everything up and fucked Lewis Hamilton over and Mercedes. It's the same way as when you're manipulating races. They manipulated the end of the race, the Agustin Canapino stop on turn 10. He was stopped in a dangerous zone. You call it, that's a caution. That's a caution any other time. They called a caution like almost immediately when Will Powers spun out into the weeds out of turn whatever, 2 or 3 or whatever it's called, turn 2. He's sitting there stalled, Canapino out of turn 10, and there'd been multiple wrecks in that area earlier in the weekend. And they don't call a caution. They allow Felix Rosenqvist to make his pit stop, then let him get out of the pits, and then throw the yellow after that. So then Scott Dixon, who was on push to pass trying to go and catch him on hot tires, couldn't pass him. So I don't know. I know that Pato was pissed off about how Marcus Armstrong was driving. It's not the first time we've seen that. I mean, you had Benjamin Peterson driving like a douche at Mid-Ohio. You've had some of these other guys, they just drive like they're completely shit for brains. And I don't know, it's the same, I don't understand the standard anymore. Like, if you're a lap car, the move is you have to get out of the way. Like, that's what I thought was the case. Like, now they just battle everybody. And that's not how it should be. If you're a lap down and you've been passed by the leader and you're not actually racing the leader, you have to move over. There should be blue and yellow flags. There should be cutoff push to pass. There should be cutoffs to what I don't care what they have to do now, because if they're going to manipulate the race and how it goes, like doing what NASCAR does and making the wrestling, you need to go and take people who are a lap down and get them the F out of the way. It's like you have 3 corners, and if you don't do it in 3 corners, we're going to penalize you 5 seconds or 10 seconds on, we're going to make you do a stop and go penalty. Like, that should be the call. Like, if you can't get out of the way or look in your mirrors and move out of the way, I don't know what you think, Josh, about it, but it's a real problem, and it's probably because there's 27 cars, which is the most they've had in many, many years. The vast majority of these cars are competitive. It's hard to get out of the way, and it affects qualifying, but I mean, there has to be a better method to handle this.
Yeah, I mean, I can agree with you there on that. I think speaking from, my iRacing experience and all that stuff, there's definitely been some times where I've been on both sides of that situation, with being somebody that might get lapped, or being somebody that's like about to lap somebody. And I mean, I personally feel like, if you're able to hold your line and continue, and you're on pace with the leader, maybe you're about to be lapped, but you're on pace, I feel like you're okay. But then also, you are impeding the leader because of dirty air. So, that's a factor. So I can see that. And I think it's just, you just have to find a spot where you can lay over and not impede, without impeding the whoever's leading or whoever's on, trying to pass you. So, it's hard, but you have to try to find a place where you can compromise. And it's also, there's, like you said, the ability for a lot of these cars and drivers to be competitive, and especially in this series where the car is a spec car, so there's very minimal difference, and it takes a lot to really be successful in this. And anybody who's good can get a good strategy and potentially turn into a good finish. But on the other end, if you're the leader, or, if you're somebody that's contending potentially for a win, it does get annoying when you get somebody that's a lap down or gonna be lapped, and they're in the way, even if they're on, they're holding their line, and they're not driving like they're too slow or anything like that, but you're catching them or whatever. So it's tough decision. And on one end, you'd think the drivers be able to police themselves, but we all know that drivers, racers, we'll take as much as we can get. And we're if we're about to be lapped down, and we feel like we have something that can be semi-competitive, at least, trying to fight to be able to stay on the lead lap and all that stuff. So it's tough, but I guess, I do agree that, if you're somebody that's definitely off the pace, somebody like, Peterson or Canapino, it's definitely a tough situation to be in. And, you just gotta be able to find a place where you can lay off and let the leader go by, or whoever go by, without impeding them. And, it's probably best, it's hard to do it in a corner. So, you got to be able to do it in a straight where, you have room to let them go by, and then, continue on in your own race. So, it's definitely a tough situation to be in for, for a leader, if, you're trying to stay on the lead lap and, trying to get the best finish that you can.
And they always talk about how you drive each other and how it'll come back. I mean, there's no guarantee that the likes of Benjamin Peterson or Stingray Robb or some of them types are going to be in the shoe's going to be on the other foot. I mean, Devlin DeFrancesco, those kind of guys. But, Marcus Armstrong is going to be driving full time next year. And if somebody's off the pace and he's running for the lead, or he's in a position to have a chance to win a race, what's the chances that he's going to get raced a little bit harder because of decisions he's made this year? That's drivers don't forget. And there has to be a consistent method in terms of handling lappers. Once you've lost a lap in an IndyCar, especially, you're not getting that lap back. I don't know if their wave around rules are horrendous, kind of like IMSA's, kind of like Formula One's, but there's no point of waving. Like, if you go a lap down, you're done. Just get out of the effing way. And so that the drivers that are in the race itself, that are still in the race, can compete. Don't make yourself part of the story. The points, just get out of that piece and go into the point standings in the IndyCar Series. Alex Palou was 90 or 89 points ahead. Is that what it is? Yeah. 89 points ahead of Scott Dixon. Scott Dixon is 30 and 57 points out of Joseph Newgarden, so he's going to finish second in points. Newgarden's 9 points ahead of Pato O'Ward, and 22 ahead of Scott McLaughlin. So those are the top five. Marcus Ericsson 6th, Will Power 7th, Lundgaard 8th, Alexander Rossi 9th, Colton Herta 10th. Rossi, Herta, and Kirkwood are separated by 3 points. So that's interesting to see those last two spots in the top 10. Rosenqvist with his runner-up at Portland now is 12th. So we'll see what happens at Laguna. Formula One brought it up. Fish Lips, 10th consecutive victory. And he's really not had to do much of anything most of those races, but he actually had to work hard to pass Carlos Sainz, the driver for Ferrari, who won the pole at Monza in a Ferrari. So that was a big deal. And, he held him off for 15 laps. But in the end, the inevitable happened. He took off, led the rest of the way, won. He had a bigger lead than what it ended up being, as they said that there was some sort of issue late in the race, so he started backing down, which is why the final time, the gap was just over 6 seconds between himself and Sergio Perez. Carlos Sainz finished third, 11.1 seconds behind, and Leclerc was right there, basically nose to tail, battling for that last podium spot. Russell rounded out the top five. He'd gotten into Esteban Ocon earlier in the race and incurred a 5-second penalty. Lewis Hamilton cleared himself across Oscar Piastri's front wing, broke it, got a 5-second penalty for avoidable contact, but was able to keep going and finish 6th. Alex Albon finished 7th for Williams, continuing their upswing here in 2023. Lando Norris, Fernando Alonso, Valtteri Bottas gets his first point since May, I think, or June. So that's a big deal for Alpha Sauber. Liam Lawson just outside of the top 10 and only in his first full weekend as a Formula One driver. Piastri ends up 12th. Logan Sargent got a 5-second penalty for avoidable contact with Bottas, and that also affected his overall result. He was running in 11th. He was in the points for a while, but fell back and ended up in 13th. So I mean, he won the race. It wasn't straightforward for him as it usually is. It's not one of the tracks that theoretically Red Bull is favored at, but when you have speed like half a second on the field, like he does, you're going to end up being able to do whatever you have to do. And he got that win, 10 in a row, setting that record. Chance to lock up the championship at Singapore if certain things fall into place, Josh. And probably will, and if he doesn't do it there, he'll probably do it in Japan.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be surprising once Max Verstappen actually goes out and locks up this championship. Sorry. But for this race, in Monza, first, Carlos Sainz, I mean, did about as good job as you can trying to hold off Max Verstappen there. And I mean, it was just inevitable that Verstappen was eventually going to get by him. It did take a little bit and a little bit longer than usual. So I guess you got to give a little bit of credit to Ferrari for building at least a somewhat decent car for Carlos, and then also for him being able to drive to however he could to be able to keep Verstappen behind him for 15 laps there. So it was actually kind of interesting the beginning of their race, watching that and thinking that maybe there's a chance here for Ferrari to actually do something. But once Verstappen was actually able to get side by side with Carlos Sainz, it was basically game over. And then once he outbroke him into the next set of chicanes after the first set there on that lap, it was game over, and he was basically able to drive away and continue on and eventually win the race. So at least Ferrari, good effort there, somewhat with being able to get a pole and start and at least lead a handful of laps in their home Grand Prix there. So at least you have consolation there. Of course, Sainz falls to third in the race. Perez eventually took him over towards the end of the race. So Red Bull goes 1-2 in Ferrari's hometown in their backyard. So this is definitely a race that they've had on their calendar. They pulled out the special livery for this event for Ferrari. So unfortunately they're not able to win, but at least they showed that they still kind of have some pulse here in this series. So at least you're able to see that, of course. And there's a little bit of argy bargy, of course. Lewis Hamilton and colliding with Oscar Piastri late in the race. That was kind of interesting, but dropped Piastri out of the points. Lewis finished in sixth, but outside of that, didn't really have anything for Lewis. In this race, wasn't able to really compete. So and all McLaren or all Red Bull race for sure. So for Verstappen, 10th win, and I think just time is ticking on when exactly will he win this championship. I think that's all we're looking for, is when will this finally be over, so we can go back to just not caring about Formula One until next year. We'll see.
Yeah, it's getting to that. I mean, it's gotten to that point anyways. If it wasn't for our show and then contributing on Grid Talk, I don't think I'd watch it all. It's gotten to be that bad. For all the complaining and people bitching when Lewis was winning, at least he actually had a teammate that made him work for it. And the cars were not like completely off balance to where the other guy couldn't go and beat the guy once in a while. So I mean, don't tell the orange moron army that though. He's leads by like 8,000 points. We'll be accurate for it just for the sake of being trying to be impartial. 145 point lead. So as it stands, how many races do they have left? So then you add this. So Singapore is round 16. So 1, 2, 6, 7, 8. So 26 times 8. So if he needs a 208 point lead, so that's not going to happen. But I mean, as it stands right now, there's a pretty good shot that he could lock up 27's 182. So right now he's in a place where I think Japan is where he can lock up the championship, which has been a place where there's been championships won many times over, historic events for good and bad. So that'll probably be where he does it. And if not, he'll probably get it at Qatar, which nobody's going to care. But we'll see what happens with that. The points behind that, Perez has got a 49-point lead on Fernando Alonso. So after what has been a pretty brutal stretch for Checo, solidifies his second place now as essentially a 2-race win advantage over Alonso, who's up by 6 on Lewis Hamilton for third. In perspective, Fernando Alonso has 170 points, while his daddy's money teammate only has 47. So that's a 123-point gap between teammates. Tells you how good Lance Stroll is. Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc, and George Russell are only separated by 8 points. So that's an interesting battle that's going to go down to the wire till the end of the season. Norris, Stroll, Gasly. Gasly's point ahead of Ocon and Piastri. So the 10th in points is also in play. And then if you consider Piastri's pace in recent races, I think he could get himself in a 9th in points before the end of the year. Alex Albon, 13th in points with 21, which leads into the constructor standings. Williams is 10 points ahead of Haas for 7th, and then Haas is a point ahead of Alfa Romeo, and then AlphaTauri is last. But it's 8 points separating 8th through 10th. The Red Bull, we know that's going to be over soon as well. Mercedes has a 45-point lead on Ferrari. Ferrari has an 11-point lead on Aston Martin for third in the constructors. And then it's a huge gap between Aston Martin and Mercedes, 102, or McLaren, 102, but they're in their own world, same as Alpine and Williams. So that's where the constructors' standings are. We'll move on next to the season preview. Long story short, Kermit the Frog coming off of his second Super Bowl title, but now he's has to go into this year. The AFC is definitely stocked and loaded with a lot of great talent, a lot of great quarterbacks. The likes of Joe Burrow, who took his Cincinnati Bengals to the Super Bowl a couple years ago. You have Josh Allen, who's considered one of the best quarterbacks in the league. In the AFC West, you have Justin Herbert, who has been one of the better players, but it's the Chargers. Oh, and then you have Aaron with the Jets. So there's just a few of them, but then there's one quarterback that Josh really likes, and he's wearing the hat that goes with it, who probably is MVP candidate this year. His name is Trevor Lawrence. So why don't you let us know, Josh, about what the landscape looks like as you lead into the 2023 season for your Jaguars as they start this week against the Indianapolis Colts and their new franchise quarterback in Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen as their head coach.
Yeah, I think, for Trevor, I think this is, like you said, this is a really good year for him to have a playoff caliber year where he becomes an MVP candidate and turns the Jags into a perennial playoff contender. And, if the season looks like the last half of last year where, he went on a tear and, led the Jaguars to comeback victories like every other week, then, it's going to be a really interesting season. And, I think Jags are going to look even better this year than they did last year. Trevor's had a year in the system in Doug Peterson's offense, so it's definitely going to be a interesting year to watch, and he's got a year with his guys that he had last year: Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, Travis Etienne, Jamal Agnew, and then also got the new addition, which I think a lot of people are hyping up on, that I think is going to open up a lot of opportunities for the names I just mentioned. Calvin Ridley, of course, wearing the number 0 this year, gonna be starting wide receiver, and I think he's gonna change the dynamic of the Jaguars offense, definitely open things up. He's a big physical receiver. He's somebody that's fast, somebody that's elusive, and definitely that deep threat that I think the Jaguars have been lacking for quite a while in the last couple of years. So somebody that can really take the top off the defense, and I think he's that guy that can do that. So Trevor's gonna have plenty of opportunities to pass the ball around and everything, and think he's gonna be really, really, really good this year. So obviously that's why I decided to pick him in fantasy. That's why I decided to make him my starting quarterback in that. So definitely a believer in him. This morning or earlier today, they came out with I think Peter King from NBC Sports has said that he's putting the Jaguars at number 1 seed at 13-4, which is going to be really interesting because they play the Chiefs in week 2, which we'll talk about in a bit in the future. But that's going to be interesting because it's going to be an early season matchup, and they're week 2, 1 p.m. in Jacksonville, so it might be in Jacksonville's favor over Kansas City. But of course, Patrick Mahomes is a really, really good as well, and they have Travis Kelce and all that, and they just know how to put up points and put up yardage. It's going to be a big challenge for the defense to go up against those two players, and we'll see how that goes. But if they beat the Chiefs in week 2 and they continue on, it should be a good year. And I can definitely see them getting to the number 1 seed or number 2 seed or something like that, and getting to the divisional round, or having a bye week. That would be a nice. And then all they do is win the divisional round, and then they're in the AFC title game for the first time since 2018. And if they win that, then first ever Super Bowl appearance. So it's not that far off. But I, on the other hand, haven't really had this type much love on the Jaguars in a long time. So it makes me nervous a little bit. Especially because I remember there have been times in the past where all the pregame panelists go and pick, and they make their picks, and they pick almost all of them pick the Jaguars, and then the other team goes out and pulls out the win. I've seen that happen, over the years. But I think this Jaguars team is a lot different than past Jaguars teams. So definitely think it's gonna be a lot different this year. So first game against the Colts in Indianapolis. So think job there is to just take care of business and get out of there with the W. And interestingly enough, they're only 5-point favorites right now, so as the betting lines have now opened. So we'll see how that goes. But I mean, it is week 1, and week 1 maybe not be as indicative of the season as the other games, but definitely looking forward to seeing how they play on the road, and then how that goes against the Chiefs in week 2.
Early season, wanting you get the division matchup there, and then having to play the Super Bowl champions right after that, but playing them at home is much more advantageous than having to go to Arrowhead. We'll see what happens with the Jags. Definitely are in a position where if they can take advantage of their division, which even Josh, you've said, as probably one ripe for the taking, and with Trevor's progress and his ascension to being a top flight quarterback, it could be a big year. But of course, it's want to keep things tempered with a lot of people talking about him. I get it. The Niners are in that same boat. Even with the fact that the quarterback situation is, we know that Brock Purdy is going to play on Sunday. He hasn't had many snaps in this in training camp or in postseason or whatever in preseason. They had him on a pitch count. They finally, moved on and decided that Trey wasn't their guy, and they went about it the way they did, which was pretty pathetic. They've had issues with injuries in certain areas, like with kicker, and not sure what's going to happen with that. Jake Moody, you got Nick Bosa still holding out, and we're 6 days away from the season starting, and he's a defensive player of the year. So there's a lot of stuff going on with the Niners, but when you go and put the team that's on the field out there, the actual roster, it's very hard to look past the 49ers and their possibilities here in terms of trying to go and win, get that elusive Super Bowl. San Francisco. What? Wow, that's something. To try to win their first Super Bowl since 1990, the 1994 season. They will start their campaign against the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road, and that's a tough matchup going to Pittsburgh, 1:00 game, so it'll be a 10 o'clock, theoretically a 10 o'clock game for the 49ers, but it is week 1, so it's not as bad as it could be. They will have, they'll be on the road the following week. They'll be going to LA, to SoFi Stadium, which is essentially a second home for them anyway, going against the LA Rams. So whatever they do, hopefully they can go out there and win against the Steelers, but it'll be a tough matchup. Kenny Pickett, you have all them guys on the offense. There's plenty of talent on both sides of the ball for the Steelers. They're on the upswing. The division there, the AFC North, is one of the best, so curious to see how they show up, how Brock Purdy looks. It's his team now, hoping that he stays upright. It's big to make sure that he does, because if that goes away, there's going to be a lot of combustion going on in the process. The Rams had a terrible year last year, so they're looking to bounce back. I wouldn't put it past them that they would go and have a good game there. It'll be a tighter game than it has been in recent times against the Rams. I mean, the early schedule has a possibility of, at least the first 4 weeks for the Niners, they could possibly be 3-1. 2-2, 3-1 is where I see this going. The Giants going and playing the Giants at home for their home opener on Thursday Night Football is a difficult matchup. Playoff team in the Giants, so gotta go and consider the opponents early in the year and make sure that you're putting your best foot forward every single game. And with some of the players that have had to replace some of the guys that left, Colton McKivitz in the right tackle spot, I'm confident that he's going to be all right, because McGlinchey was god awful. He's overrated. So I think he'll be able to, and he's good at the pass blocking game. I think he'll get better on the run block because he's standing right next to Kittle. Kittle has an opportunity to get back to being that dual threat tight end that he was earlier in his career. Ayuk looking to go and build upon his solid year last year, and Debo wanting to prove himself yet again. On the defensive side of the ball, Drake Jackson right now is the one defensive end, and Cleveland Farrell, who has had a good training camp and preseason. He's somebody that top 5 draft pick, somebody that we're going to look at as long as Nick Bosa isn't around. And then you have that interior with Eric Armstead and Javon Hargrave. They signed him for a bunch of money. So those are guys, that interior line sets the tone. You have the linebackers, Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw, which is the best middle linebacker duo in the game. Mooney Ward and Demondre Lenore in the corners. Isaiah Oliver now taking over as the nickelback. Talanoa Hufanga and Tayshaun Gibson in the safety position. One of the best defenses in the league. Had to replace a bunch of people, but it shows that while Lynch and Shanahan don't have great track records early in the draft, they've done better and later, and that's where you fill all these spots up. It shows Jake Moody and Zane Gonzalez for the kickers, but right now they have to see what the injury list looks like. Ray McLeod is injured, so Willie Snead or Ronnie Bell is going to be taking back punts and kickoffs. So that's something to keep an eye on with the special teams there. So early in the season, make sure you're just staying healthy, keeping players upright, and making the right plays and making the right decisions. That's the biggest battle there. Fantasy teams have now drafted 3 teams and did the Dynasty League. We're able to redraft for that, and the teams are all my teams. I feel pretty good about them right now, and it's early. You can't go and make a determination on 1 week. Can't overreact on 1 week, but I think my teams have a good chance, and they can be in the mix. Just have to stay up on them and make the right pickups and make the right moves in general, so that you don't fall behind some of these other managers, which in all these leagues seemingly that I'm in, they're tough outs. So something to keep an eye on for sure. Okay, we'll move forward. So GSP roundup time. Try to go and keep her a little tighter than usual. MotoGP yesterday was pretty rough. Saw Pecco Bagnaia go and have a massive high side after he avoided the incident that was triggered by his teammate Enea Bastianini that crashed out 5 or 6 bikes. Bastianini is going to be out for a few races because of that wreck and the injuries he suffered. Pecco Bagnaia then high sides, falls off, and gets run over by Brad Binder. Thankfully, he's not suffered any serious injuries, and we'll see if he's going to be back this weekend for Misano. But even if he takes the week off, he's 50 points ahead of Jorge Martin. So, I mean, it's entirely possible he could miss a round and then get back on, to race in Bud International Circuit for the Indian Grand Prix, and then they'll be racing at Motegi the following week. So that's probably where he needs to keep himself fit and give himself a chance. But outside of that, the Aprilia duo of Alicia Spargaro and Maverick Vinales finished 1 and 2 in the race, and so that was a big deal for Spargaro winning his home Grand Prix. Jorge Martin rounds out the podium. 3 Spanish riders on the podium in Spain, 4 out of the top 6. Zarco and Oliveira rounding out the top 5. Fabio Quartararo, former world champion, 7th, etc., etc. In terms of the points going in. So yeah, as I mentioned, Bagnaia 50 points ahead of Jorge Martin. Martin is 21 points out of Marco Bezzecchi, and Bezzecchi is 23 ahead of Binder. Binder 12 ahead of Alex Espargaro, who's now won 2 out of the last 3 races. The Moto 2 situation, part of what I wanted to get into is the fact that Sean Dillon Kelly was injured, was off the bike for a while to recover from said injuries, but when he was ready to come back, he didn't have a ride anymore, which is pretty brutal for him. And he's going to be looking at his plans for next year and announcing them in due course, but otherwise it's a bad look or bad situation for him at the moment. The Moto 2 race saw Jake Dixon win over Aaron Canet and Albert Arenas. We go through, Pedro Acosta 6th. Joe Roberts finished 11th, and so okay point score there. 4 riders didn't finish the race there on Sunday. I'm trying to go into the point standings for Moto 2. And just out of Pedro Acosta is 22 points out of Tony Arbolino, and Dixon is 44 points behind Pedro Acosta heading into the next round at San Marino. Indy Next was at Portland last week. Rare race where Christian Rasmussen wasn't at the 4. Louis Foster ended up taking advantage of incidents early in the race. Foster won his second race of the season, and first since Mid-Ohio, won by 7.85 seconds over Nolan Siegel and Daniel Frost, who might be driving an IndyCar next year. So credit to him. We'll see how that all works out. The point standings: Rasmussen 65 points ahead of Hunter McElroy, and 70 points ahead of Nolan Siegel. So it's pretty much foregone conclusion that Christian Rasmussen is going to be the Indy Next champion in 2023. Just really has to keep his nose clean to make that happen. Louis Foster 4th and Jacob Abel 5th. Ernie Francis now is 9th in points, and Jamie Chadwick ended up having a 6th place finish on Sunday, her best finish of the season, currently 12th. You got Jagger Jones 14th, Josh Pearson, Matty Brabham, and Yuvin Sundaramurthy made a second appearance at Portland last weekend, currently 23rd. Hopefully he'll be racing full time in 2024 in the Indy Lights Series or Indy Next Series. Mentioned the Big Go, the U.S. Nationals took place this weekend or today in Top Fuel. Antron Brown takes his second consecutive U.S. Nationals victory. Ron Capps also takes his second consecutive U.S. Nationals victory. That's in Top Fuel and Funny Car, respectively. Matt Smith as well defended his title. And then Matt Hartford won his first career U.S. Nationals in Pro Stock. Trying to go through Madison Payne wins in top alcohol dragster. So now I'm curious. Beats Julie Natus there for Madison Payne. Trying to bring that up there. I'll see if they don't have any of the pro categories. Or the only other pro categories, detailed results. Top alcohol dragster. And you got an E1. Yeah, Jackie Free. Yeah, so Tony Stewart beat Brendan Greco in the first round. In round 2, Tony Stewart lost to the eventual winner, Julie Natus, in the second round there. So fortunate for Tony, trying to win the Wally at the Big Go in top alcohol dragster, but fell just a little bit short on that. In the Pro Mod, Chris Dorn, Justin. Okay, so thinking would be tricky. Ricky Smith. I mentioned Matt Smith ends up beating Hector Rana Jr. Redlit, trying to go and make something happen on a start line. He had the faster lapse time and faster speed, but he redlit. Unfortunately, Hector Rana ends up leaving out the Wally there. Matt Hartford goes and he was late on the starting line by a little bit, but beats Fernando Quadra Jr. for his first U.S. Nationals victory. Ron Capps ends up holding off J.R. Todd, who had issues in the semifinals with a brake line coming off. He comes back, the whole Coletta team puts that car together and was able to at least get on the line and race, but he wasn't at full strength. Ron Capps gets a victory in a Donda Snake Prudhomme Hot Wheels throwback, which was his mentor and his idol, and he worked for him. So it was a huge deal for that. If they would sell the diecast, it'd be huge, even bigger. And Antron Brown beat his BFF Steve Torrance in the top fuel category. Antron Brown barely made it into the show, so to go from making it in 15th to winning the U.S. Nationals is a pretty big deal. But, for Antron Brown, that's his 5th win at the U.S. Nationals. Got Formula 2 last week at Monza. And they Formula 2, get that, yeah. The results from the races this weekend at Monza: Frederick Vesti, the winner of the sprint, and Ollie Bierman, the winner of the feature. In the sprint race, Vesti over Victor Martins and Richard Vachor, Teo Pocher and Kush Miney rounding out the top 5. I'll look for some of the other guys. Jack Crawford was 13th. Jan Derulo 17th. Juan Melo Correa 18th. Then in the feature race, Ollie Bierman over Iwasa, Pocher, Enzo Fittipaldi, Dennis Hauger. Deruvla recovers in the feature to finish 7th. Novak and Correa 14th, Jack Crawford 16th. Standings with 2 races, 1 round left. Pocher has a 24-point lead on Frederick Vesti and 38 on Iwasa. So that's something to look at as they move forward into a long break before they get to Abu Dhabi for their season finale. World Superbikes at Manny Core. They come back after their summer break. The big news coming out is Johnny Ray, the 6-time World Superbike champion consecutively for Kawasaki, will now move to Yamaha, taking over the bike that Toprak Raskatliok is leaving to go to BMW. So that'll be interesting to see Johnny Ray on another bike for the first time in many years. And how that all affects how that goes will probably affect the initial pecking order going into the 2024 season, since Ducati and Alvaro Bautista have been so dominant. Points, I mean, Alvaro Bautista is going to win the championship. Pretty certain of that, no matter what. I mean, he's currently, and that's do that. He's 74 points ahead of Toprak Raskatliok, so it's not like insurmountable, but the way that Bautista's ran most of the year, it's going to be very hard. Ray is third, Andrea Locatelli fourth, Axel Bassani rounds out the top 5. You got Garrett Kurloff is currently 14th in the drivers or riders standings heading into this weekend's round. Okay, so we got through all that. The WEC at Fuji returns this coming weekend for 6 hours. They're 1,000 kilometers. Endurance, yeah. So that's not what I wanted. Season 23 World Endurance Championship. You had so they've run 5 rounds of the season. You have couple 3 more races to go. You have Fuji and Bahrain to end the 2023 season of World Endurance Championship. They're going to have Coda back on the schedule next year. So that'll be good to utilize that circuit and have the best sports cars in the world in general. That'll be a good thing to see. I will recap who won in the classes at Fuji this coming weekend. Okay, so we'll move forward. I mentioned, so we'll have the season finale at Laguna Seca. Josh and Alex Palou's got it locked up, of course. So in terms of Laguna Seca, it's a very tight circuit. It's going to be some of the same issues in qualifying happen at Portland is going to happen again at Laguna. It's very narrow in certain spots, but they repaved the place, so it's going to be much faster. So there are a lot of things going on there, a lot of different dynamics. But for me, my pick for the season finale will be Alex Palou, because he has nothing to lose and he's already won everything. So why not win one more time? My wild card pick for the race on Sunday, trying to bring that up so that I know where I'm at in terms of a wild card selection for this weekend. I'm waiting on the computer. Technical difficulties, of course. Waiting on that. Get rid of that. Close that. Manifest that. Trying to. So that's where I don't want that. I was trying to get the IndyCar point standings, because motorsport.com is not always reliable with that. I might be fighting myself. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Okay, there you go. So, trying to see who would be eligible, because you have 28. Yeah, 28 drivers that were full time in some capacity, or at least part time in some capacity. If you're going, so that would actually make it go down all the way to 31. So it'll be like 16. I mean, I'll go with Callum Ilott again. He qualified on the front row at Laguna Seca last year, and I would venture to say that he would have a good idea for how to go and get around the track, at least for one lap. We'll see what happens with that for Junkos Hollander and their organization. To win, Ilott as wild card. Josh, who do you look at to win the race this weekend and be a wild card?
I mean, since you already picked Alex Palou, I'll just go with his teammate Scott Dixon. See if he can get just one more win here in 2023, cap off the year. Even though he doesn't win the championship, let's see if he can get a win in the last race of the year. And my wild card, I'll just go with David Malukas. See what he can do here. Last race of the year on possibly his last race at Dale Coyne. So we'll see what he can do his final race there, and see if he can cap off the year with a good finish.
Yeah, those are solid selections. Oh, I mean, we did that basically last week too. So Lucas has been on an upswing as well, so that'd be a good way to end the year for him and his time at Dale Coyne. Xfinity Series will run at Kansas this coming weekend, as we've mentioned, will be the final race of their regular season. I don't think they've put out a entry list as of yet. Doesn't look like it. Yeah, so not sure who's in the show or who's in the race and who needs points and all, but I look at in general, or Josh, you get to go first actually. Who do you choose as your winner and wild card for the Xfinity Series? And then who makes it in? Is there somebody on points? If that's the case, who is it? If it isn't somebody on points, who would that be? And how then end up winning to get in?
Yeah. So yeah, I think I guess for that, I'm gonna just go ahead and pick John Hunter Nemechek. Feel like he's just the solid pick that you make for this type of racetrack, and how he's performed over the course of the year and everything. And then I think wild card. Wild card. I'll just go with Parker Retzlaff as my wild card, and then I think somebody that makes it in on points. I mean, it's a very, very tough situation, but I'm going to say that. Here. I mean, it's a pretty wide scenario, but I mean, I think Sammy Smith makes it in on points. Could see maybe somebody on fuel strategy like
Sammy Smith is already in with a win, though.
Okay, yeah. I'm looking at this wrong then. Okay.
Both Sammy Smith and Jeb Burton are outside of the top 12, but they have a win, so they're locked in. The drivers that don't have a win are Josh Berry, Sheldon Creed, and Daniel Hemrick. And then you have the two guys that are on the bubble and whatever. Those first three basically are going to go and lock in once the race starts. So it's really between Kligerman and Herbst for the points, or if somebody goes and gets a Hail Mary and wins on Saturday.
Okay, yeah. Well, okay, in that case, yeah. I mean, it's hard to say like for Kligerman that he falls out of this on points. So I think Kligerman gets in. It's hard to say Riley Herbst has shown anything that he can win the race to get in there. So I'll think Kligerman stays in. I mean, it would be interesting if Brandon Jones or somebody like was able to win to get in on points. So that might be something to look at. But I think things stay the same, and I think Parker Kligerman gets in.
Yeah, I think that I would agree on that sentiment. And everything you said, because I don't see Riley Herbst doing anything to get in unless he has the weekend of his life and puts it all together. I mean, he puts gets the pole, gets stage wins, is up front all day. I mean, I don't see that. He's never driven like that ever. So Kligerman goes and battles back into the points mix, gets himself into the playoffs officially. So that would be a good deal for Big Machine Records and the Borshad family, and in their second year of existence, or third year of existence, I think. Yeah. So that would be a good deal for them. The winner for me, I'm trying to see the expanded standings. I mean, I'm going to pick Josh Berry to win. I was going to go Sheldon Creed, but it doesn't seem to work. I'm going to go with Josh Berry. Over the years, he's been really solid on 1.5 mile racetracks in the XFinity Series. This would be an opportunity for Berry to get momentum. The wild card pick, I'm trying to see 25, so that's 13. Yeah, 13. Yeah, 20. Yeah, there's 25. So or 26. So yeah, it's 13. So my wild card pick, I'll make it Buckshot Jones. The guy who's won at Kansas before. He's right there in that, right there as the first guy outside in that realm. He needs a win. You figure Junior Motorsports is going to want to put their eggs in the basket, trying to push everybody forward. I mean, Mayer's basically on his own right now. You want Josh Berry to have a win. You would want Buckshot Jones to get a win so he can get into playoffs. I mean, Allgaier wants to win another race before the playoffs start. So I'll go and post that. Buckshot Jones. Jones wild card, and Kligerman. That's into playoffs. The last but not least will be the Cup Series Hollywood Casino 400 at Kansas Speedway. Trying to get the standings and the whole bit there for Kansas, and also trying to remember earlier in the year, and Denny Hamlin won the race in May at Kansas Speedway over Kyle Larson when he ran into Kyle Larson, turned him. Will Byron, Darrell Walsh Jr., Ross Chastain were the top 5. Logano, Elliott, Truex, Reddick, and Bald Spot Dylan. Harvick and Richard was 12th, etc., etc. So when I'm trying to go and do this, so that would be length equal or less than or equal to 1.5 miles. So that's all rankings. Yeah, so in the last 10 races on 1.5 mile racetracks, I mean, I think that takes into account Atlanta as well. So it's a bit deceiving. Byron's had the best average finish. Blaney's not far behind. Allmendinger's not done bad for himself in that spot. I mean, Chastain's pretty good at Kansas. Hamlin probably wants redemption here. For Kansas, I'm gonna go with the Denny Hamlin to get redemption and get his win at Kansas, another win at Kansas. So at Kansas, Phil Hamlin to win the wild card for me at Kansas this weekend is, it says Cup expanded standings. You got basically 18 to 19, 20, 21, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. Yeah, so there's 15. Wild card will be. I mean, I picked Elliott last week. I probably could go. I'm gonna go with Keebler as my wild card. Been on the upswing for the most part, trying to keep things in check as wild card. What say you, Josh, in regards to the Kansas Cup race?
I mean, it's pretty interesting to say, with you picking Hamlin to go sweep the year at Kansas, but I'll go with Tyler Reddick here in this one. He's 2311's been really good at this track in the past and everything. So I think Tyler Reddick locks in his way to the round of 12 this weekend. I guess wild card. I guess I'll go pick Daniel Suarez wild card. We're gonna start picking guys outside the playoffs now. I guess Suarez, solid guy to pick for wild card.
Yeah, I mean the Trackhouse team has done relatively well at Kansas. So I don't. That's Chastain has done really well there. So, I mean, it wouldn't be out of the realm if Suarez can go put one together. All right, so Josh, we can talk about all things gaming and iRacing in your sim segment. Let us know what's going on in the world of sim racing and gaming.
Yeah, of course. And, this week, iRacing is week 13. And, week 13 in iRacing is the fun week where we have the, races that don't count for anything. So, actually, of interest here, the iRacing. So, I got the Global MX5 cars, 13th week iRacing Identity Crisis Challenge. That's global, the MX5s at Martinsville, which, of note, at Martinsville, the real life MX5s just did a test there with Dale Jr., Bobby Labonte as some of the NASCAR stars there, and then I think some of the IMSA guys there as well. So that's going to be interesting there for that on the schedule. So that's today, I guess. And then, it's a changing schedule, but it looks like they're doing the MX5 car on all short tracks this week, so that should be fun for 25 lap heats, so that should be interesting there. I think the 911 GT3 992 edition racing at Spa, that's gonna be interesting. You've got that's the Porsche Cup. Of course, you still have the NASCAR iRacing classes that continue on a week-to-week basis because those are weekly series. You've got the Street Shock Challenge, Dirt ridiculousness. See, you got Battle of the Little Wings, Skip Barber, Formula V at Lime Rock Park. You got Dallara Dash at Homestead. You got 13th week Simkhana, the Formula Ford at the Daytona Rallycross track. So yeah, of course, with all these week 13 series, that means that the new season is upon us in iRacing. So season 4 iRacing, so that's the fall portion of the iRacing schedule, and the latest updates in iRacing on here. So we already talked about some of the cars and content that will be added. We talked about the Acura GTP. We talked about the 87 Pontiac Grand Prix being added. And so now, in addition to those, they're adding more content, the Porsche 963 GTP LMDH. So I think that's the full slate of GTP cars, in addition to the Cadillac that have been added. You have the Acura and the Porsche, and I think I'm missing one here, but you have those. So you have three of the GTP cars in iRacing now, and that's interesting. Let me just IMSA GTP class. I just want to see here the IMSA Championship in GTP entries. In GTP, you had Cadillac, the Porsche, Acura, and the BMW. And yeah, the iRacing does have the BMW as well. So the full slate of all the cars that competed in IMSA this year. So that should be interesting, and actually lends itself to being very interesting for the the simulated Rolex 24 that'll happen in January. Have a full slate of cars. So I think in the past they've only had one set of cars that you could use for each class. So I think the top class had the Dallara P217, and then you had the LMP2 cars, and then you had the GT cars and all such and so forth. So now we have a full set of what the IMSA series actually uses in GTP. Might actually make the Rolex 24 in iRacing very interesting. So might be very interesting to see how that, and just how the cars are different, just as they're different in real life. How different are they in the sim? And might make some interesting choices between deciding which one to pick, and everything. So we'll see how that goes. The other updates, season 4, Kern County Raceway Park, which that's the used to be, that's what took over Mason Marin from back in the day. That's basically Kevin Harvick's home racetrack from his hometown in Bakersfield, California. And it's a good short track over there. Circuit Zandvoort, where we just had the Dutch Grand Prix a week ago now. That's also there on an update in iRacing. We already had it. Now they're updating to what the 2020 spec is in iRacing now. And then another circuit day, Lebanon, which I think is looks like it's a French version of Laguna Seca in a way. That's also on there as well. And then the Ferrari 296 GT3 car as another car that's being added for season 4. And then rumor has it, from where I'm reading on right now, that there's going to be potentially a rain update to this, where they're finally going to add rain to iRacing.com, which might be interesting. We'll see how that goes. If it's not in this one, which might be something, they're not confirming this, seems like, so we'll see how much they're going to have in this, and if at all in this update, or if it's going to delay another season or however many months that they need to put this in the update. But that could be interesting. They've never had rain ever in iRacing or any Papyrus game. It's I think pretty much all the other racing games that exist have rain in some form. I think iRacing is the only major one to not have it, and I think I forget the reason why they haven't, but I guess they've just never been able to model it properly and render it properly or something like that. But I guess they finally figure out a way, and I guess at some point they're going to release a rain update to allow for rain racing. So that should be actually pretty exciting, and it would be exciting if they did release it for this one coming up here in a week or so. So yeah, we'll see how it goes if they do it and everything. But yeah, we'll see. Dynamic rain and weather conditions that could happen, and then also there's a new series called a couple new series. One's the Draft Master Series, and it's basically just Daytona and Talladega for 12 weeks, first 6 weeks Daytona, second 6 weeks Talladega. But the catch there is that it's going to be a different oval car each week. So it starts out the Truck Series car, or Truck Series truck, I should say, and then the original COT car of tomorrow, Chevrolet Impala from 2009, 2010 spec, and that's going to be interesting because that one is unrestricted on iRacing. So, in the draft, they'll be able to go probably, 240 miles an hour. So I think that's a ranked series as well. So we'll see how, the racing plays out like that. And then week 3 of this, you have the Xfinity Series car, and then the 87 car, then the Gen 4 car, and then the next gen car. So, and then repeats for Talladega in the same order. So that should be interesting, especially with the 87 on repaved Daytona, and then the Gen 4 car as well, and then the unrestricted original car tomorrow on there. That should be pretty exciting as well. So got that on iRacing, and then the other series that they're adding is called the Ringmeister Series, which basically is just a road course version of the same of this Draft Master Series, but just with different cars, or different road racing cars, rotating on a week-to-week basis, competing, I want to say, at the Nürburgring Nordschleife circuit exclusively. So you've got in that series, you have the Ford FR500, which that's the Mustang, and the next one's the BMW M4 GT3 spec racer, street stock, Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo, Aston Martin Vantage GT4, VW Jetta Radical SR10, 911 RSR, the Mercedes GT3, Toyota GR86, and then the week 12 at the end, that's going to be in December, the Lotus 49. So a couple of new series in iRacing should be exciting. Definitely gonna have to check those out there to play and probably stream. So yeah, definitely a lot coming in iRacing, especially that rain update that could be coming in this next update or eventually. So looking forward to doing that one. That should be definitely chaotic and exciting. So as always, the stream for iRacing when it's up, Twitch TV/usailor2. Go in there and follow or interact and see all past videos there that are up there. Go and watch that. And the Twitter account at JP Huffine. Go in there, follow me, and especially with football season coming around, definitely will have a lot of takes and opinions as Jags make their move to become AFC contenders in there. So we'll definitely be talking on there. And then of course YouTube channel, Grip Shit Podcast. Go in there and like, comment, and subscribe to all our content and everything on there. So I continue to support the channel on that platform. So yeah, as always, thanks for having me on, and appreciate being able to always be able to talk about racing and everything, and glad we're able to always be back for another week, and be here for another season of football and doing fantasy and all that stuff. So yeah, I was glad to be able to talk about that tonight.
Absolutely, wouldn't want to do it with anybody else. So glad we were able to take care of it, get it done. We're on tight schedule, but we got it. So it was good. Take care of it all. You can find me at PGMatthew28 on Twitter X. You can find us at GripStripPod on Twitter X. Josh mentioned the GripStrip Podcast YouTube page. You can find the GripStrip Podcast basically anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can also find it on Podbean, which is our host site, and philipgmatthew.com, which is my blog site. And we'll be back next week to talk about all things went on here. Kansas for NASCAR Cup and Xfinity. We'll do IndyCar at Laguna Seca, ending their season. Formula One will be back at Singapore. We'll preview that and preview Bristol, the night race at Bristol, and then anything else that gone on in the world of motorsports and week 1 in the NFL season. We'll talk about all that here next week on episode 186 of the Grip Trip Podcast. So for Josh, I'm Phil. Take care, and we'll see you next time.